Welcome to the Electrify Expo Podcast. I'm Matt Teske, and I'm here again with Joe Borras. We got a lot to talk about today. This is episode 3, and today we're going to be talking about a variety of pretty cool and new things we've been hearing about. And we're also going to be going into some details about what Ford has upcoming, and guess what? Battery swapping is a thing, and we're going to talk about it. All right, let's get into this right now. A company that's moving in the space of what's going to happen with respect to the future, how's this going to work? NIO, not Nikola, but NIO, out of China, they've made it very clear that they can make battery swapping for electric cars actually viable. And they're saying they've got now 500,000 swaps on record that have worked, that have been effective, and that have made drivers happy, and they've logistically figured this out. So
so it's worth saying that this is not an announcement that, hey, we can make this viable. This is an announcement that says, hey, this is already viable. We've done it 500,000 times as of May 26th.
Yeah, that's bonkers. I mean, the thing that always trips me out about battery swapping is it's so material intensive. Is you need to have so many batteries charged and waiting underground, sitting for these cars to come up and use. And so I think that's probably the biggest reason why we haven't seen a lot of other companies pursue this, is because it is capital intensive to invest all that money into having those batteries just sitting there. And I get it, more cars coming, you're going to cycle through them faster, but I don't know. Do we want that much just batteries just sitting around doing nothing? Or can we just create more electricity and have people just have their battery in their car and store that energy? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, but we're talking about two different things now. We're talking about batteries, being what they are, and then we're talking about the electricity as a fuel. Sure. So you're talking about storing that fuel in the form of these cubic things that sit at this station, right? A battery station. I mean, is that really more material intensive than having a 500,000 gallon tank of intensely flammable liquid underground?
Well, I think, partly too is the way we're talking about refilling by battery swaps is the fact that it's fast. I mean, that's really the end game behind it. That's it. It's all about time for the consumer. And so I understand the value of that for any driver who's used to getting a 5-minute fill up, right? And so, I mean, Tesla did their own battery swap. Remember that Elon came out, they had some guy getting gas, and they proved it's quick. But it's just, you look at that and you think to yourself, how many extra batteries do you need sitting around to make that a viable option for not just for every electric car, but just for a particular brand? Because we don't have universal battery design. I mean,
no. So that's a key thing. So number one, obviously we don't have universal battery design. I give you that, but I'm looking at it another way. So first of all, you're way smarter than I am, because I never would have thought about any of how many batteries we need per car. I don't care. The way that I look at it is like, if I had a car, like let's say I bought a 2020, I go out today and I buy a Nissan Leaf, right? Because I think that's a good looking car. I drive around in that thing. So, and now it's got a battery swap tech. And the battery that comes out next month gets me, 15% more power and 20% range. Mm-hmm. I don't have to go buy another car.
Yeah.
I just pull up to that station, get a new battery, and I don't care.
Yep.
And then if it's a battery that's going to, it's like a cordless drill. If it takes a 12 volt and an 18 volt battery, and it's badass with the 18 volt battery, and it's just a little screwdriver with the 12, that gives you some options.
I totally agree with what you're getting at, because how many people drive, more than 300 miles in a day? The answer is effectively nobody. If you had a battery in your vehicle that was efficient for your everyday needs, which is like, okay, I got like 100 miles of range, I'm set. But when you want to go on that road trip, you can go, cool, I'll just go swap this out for a 300 mile range pack, and I'll pay extra to use it or something. Those use cases make a ton of sense, but then it boils down to, that's still a boatload of money to invest into having those batteries sitting there.
But how many people, invest in $50,000 pickup trucks that, haul around an inch of wax in the bed for 363 days out of the year?
Well, let's be honest. If I have a lifted truck in Southern California, the chances are I'm going to think like, this is probably going to get me laid if I, put the right wheels on it. My battery's not going to get me laid. Come on.
I don't know, man. You think that many dudes are into lifted pickup trucks?
I'm probably more so than they're into batteries.
Yeah, fair enough.
But this leads to a new question, which is, we've got
how many gallons of oil are just there unused?
Right. Again, that could be argued that it's in in the ground still, that it's already been extracted, it's already been refined, it's in tanks, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same kind of question. And so, but I will say this, if the battery exists and you can just simply store, pump it full of electricity to get your energy back, there's less material need, but you still have to create the electricity, right? So there's still emissions related to that. This is where my head goes for all these interconnected touch points, but it still comes back to I'm thinking about this as a person who knows the interconnected elements, but average people are going to go, I don't care. How fast are you going to fill me up to get me where I'm going? And so and battery swapping for that makes a driver say, yeah, that's cool, that's fast, it's easy. And if NIO's done 500,000 of them, I'm sorry, that to me, that's a very strong proof point that they accomplished that in a period of, 2.5 years.
So with NIO having already put this out there and having already built this, let's call it limited infrastructure, right? Because when there's you're talking about a country that has 100 million vehicles, 500,000 battery swaps, maybe it sounds cool, but it's not a big chunk of the market. How many of these stations and how much of this infrastructure do they have to put out there for other car makers to start looking at this and going, maybe here's our universal battery, and we just start buying these batteries from NIO?
Honestly, that's an interesting question, because how much are we seeing from legacy auto brands that they are relying on these third-party vendors to provide them effectively the lifeblood of these cars, which is the battery?
Well, and if you look at what Ford is doing, Ford is buying batteries from BYD in China.
Yeah,
right?
well,
that's another big news topic.
Yeah, and so I think that if NIO can prove that they not only have the right approach to how you can get it in and out of the car fast for a driver, but also that they have the right technology for how far you can go on one charge with that battery, they're going to begin to point to the fact that they are one of the prime players, if not the prime player, for how you can create the best experience with driving an electric car. So.
Yeah, now you just made an interesting point, because I hadn't thought of this. I was thinking of it in terms of an either-or scenario, but you're right. I can plug this thing into my wall. There's nothing stopping me from that.
Right.
The only time I ever need to do a battery swap is when I'm 300 miles from home and I have 300 miles of range.
Totally. You can still own and operate your car at home and manage your fuel as electricity all day long. It's when you want to go on that long journey where you go, man, I don't want to bother with basically waiting for a second. I'm just going to pop in, out, get my new battery, and boom. The next question then comes into play of, did the new battery I get, is it as good as my last battery? Is it giving me that same amount of range? That will totally come into play.
But do you care? Then you just go and swap it out for another one. And then some other idiot gets a crappy battery.
But that's something that logistically, imagine being the engineer behind that going, oh God, this one has a bad cell. And oh man, this bothered this driver. Oh, it was a bad experience. Now they hate our product because they got 18 miles less on this battery. I don't want to be the person that's having to deal with that PR nightmare. And again, these are things that who's going to be managing those conversations, because consumers are going to have those kinds of complaints if it happens.
Yeah, and the bigger question is going to be, will the consumer be educated enough about the battery itself to understand the difference? So
they won't care. They'll just pop it in and they'll just see that number come up on their screen that went from 318 to 301, and those 17 miles gone will be hell to pay on Yelp.
Yeah, for sure. So, but let's get back around to what we were talking about before. So we're still in China, right? We went from NIO. So now let's talk about BYD, which again is supplying EV batteries to Ford. Ford's only electric product that's pure electric right now is we talked about it in the first episode, the Mustang SUV or CUV or whatever they want to call it.
It's the Mach-E. Come on, it's okay, but it's the Mach-E.
They can call it whatever they want. I think the bigger question is going to be,
it's got a horse on it. It's a Mustang.
But are people going to buy a Mustang that's made in China, brother?
That's okay. So heart and soul, like it is a Ford, right? In the same way the Chevrolet Bolt is a Chevy. But where are the guts coming from? Yeah, for these different electric cars, it's going to be interesting to see how people respond. What are they passionate about? This gets back to, did my lifted truck get me attention, or did my battery get me attention? That Ford Mustang Mach-E is still a Ford Mustang to a lot of people that see it at face value. Are they going to care or even understand the battery comes from China? They may not give a damn. So,
I couldn't tell you right now where Mustang stuff is made.
Oh, how many cars are not made where people think they're made? I drive a Honda. Oh, Honda's from Japan. Oh, but your car was manufactured in Ohio.
Right. Exactly right.
So
yeah, that's an interesting conversation too, right? Like what makes a car whether it's American or English or Japanese, like, who knows? So
I would say most people where the brand was born.
Where the brand was, God, that sounds so good. America. Ford was born.
You gotta go to the big Detroit city. I mean, but it's true.
That's phenomenal. But that's exactly right. It is exactly right. And I think that, that kind of changes my way of thinking on this. I thought this was a risky move from Ford. Coming into this, I was going to have all this whole conversation about how this is kind of a risky move. And, there's a lot of conservative political leaning guys who buy pickup trucks, and maybe they're not going to be too happy about this. And then tariff, trade war, coronavirus. But like, no, you kind of turned me around on this. I'm really excited about this concept of like where the brand was born. Well, Chrysler did that a couple years ago, right? With imported from Detroit.
Totally. I mean, again, they got Eminem to do the voiceover on the spot because it speaks to the passion of people's understanding of where are they from, how do they attach themselves emotionally to this brand. And this gets back to, are they going to be emotionally attached to the battery, the design of the battery, those technical details? The oddity of it is this makes me think of things like, can you see the motor? For example, you pop the hood on a gas-powered car, you can see the engine. You can see if it's chromed. You can see all these different details. When you turn it on, you can see it move. There's all these very sensory responses to the fact that thing has an engine. With an electric car, it's a completely different element in the fact that the battery does all the the energizing of the work. It holds the power. The electric motors, they're the size of a watermelon. They don't.
But I mean, are we speaking about that as enthusiasts? Because like, number one, I can't imagine ever buying a vehicle without looking under the hood. But for those of you listening who don't know, like I'm from that dealership world. I sell a lot of cars, buddy. Like a lot. Like even in the context of someone who sells cars, I sell a lot of them.
Well, under the hood,
probably 90% never look under the hood.
Well, that's it. It's the enthusiast, the passion of this, but the understanding of it is also hard for automakers, right? That's what they've known forever. They've leveraged, or even dealers. Man, turn this thing, crank it up. Listen to how this thing sounds. Rev the engine. That's been an element of sales for decades, and it's not here now. Now it's different. Now it's like, hey, actually go out on the road and floor it, and it'll pin you to the seat because it's got more torque than anything you've ever driven. But
and it's quiet. You can listen to your favorite podcast or us. It's my favorite joke. One last thing before we move on from this, because I really do like that angle of being where the brand was born. I used to go on a lot more, but I still go on quite a few, automotive press trips and things like that. And they give me cars and they put me in nice hotels to say nice things about them. And sometimes I do. Then I don't get invited back. But one thing that I kept that I think is really cool, and I got up to get it. This is like the only thing that I kept. This is a tile from like some swimming pool in Detroit, and it's imported from Detroit from Chrysler. And I just thought that was so cool. And
that is cool.
Here on my desk. While we're on the topic, and Chris, don't edit this out. This is good. While we're on the topic, an automaker who shall not be named, because I got in trouble with them and I like them. I don't want to be in trouble with them, but it's Acura. They wanted, when they did the new TSX, they played it with like a Ramones song, and they were like, we're going to market this as like the punk rock thing. And I was like, first of all, it's a sedan aimed at middle management. Like you cannot possibly get less punk rock than this. And the tchotchke gift that they gave us was a desk organizer.
That speaks to rebellion, my friend.
Listen,
oh my God.
Nobody has ever rebelled with a desk organizer.
I would say that's accurate.
No, Acura.
I'm sorry, Acura. Yeah. It certainly speaks to the fact that, Rancid was not going around like selling desk organizers at shows like after hours. Like you want to speak
to a Rancid show, I couldn't tell you.
That's fair.
I make assumptions, but I mean, for all I know, they have quill pens and like, calligraphy artists.
Well, there you go. As tchotchkes go, if we're going to have the tchotchke conversation, I still think this is one of the coolest things that I have.
I just thought you got that out of yours ever since I found out you had a Tesla and were like a rich guy.
And I'm a rich guy. You have no idea how much
I need an electric because I can't afford gasoline.
But I think it's one of those things where it's, again, the tactile like understanding of like what it is you have as a product. And I think as tchotchke, and I'm holding a Tesla single battery cell that has Tesla engraved on it that I have on my desk. And it's just a very cool way to understand what is this product, because a lot of it's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, upstairs in my house, I have a BBS wheel as an end table because it's badass.
Yeah. So Fiat has their new Fiat 500e. It's their first electric. Not only their first electric, it's their first car that was designed from the ground up to be electric. This is replacing the old 500e that was just a regular Fiat that somebody jammed a bunch of AA batteries into, which I think is still faster than a regular Fiat, right? But anyway, in this case, this is actually a really slick machine. It looks very similar, but it's bigger in every dimension. It's really nice, and they're making a Bulgari version that's like available for the public, and it's like $25,000 more than the regular one. And it's just like leather and slick gauges and everything. And like, I'm the first one to call BS on this marketing nonsense. However, I also realize that I am a pawn of the marketers, and like, I might lease one.
It reminds me, do you remember back when the Scion IQ came out?
Yes, go.
So Aston Martin basically had
the Signet. The Signet. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, you bought the Aston Martin and you got this little thing or something. I mean, it was like
you got the Signet, which was it was a Scion IQ electric made to look like an Aston Martin, but it had Aston Martin seats.
Oh,
I mean, it was like $60,000, and they gave it to you so that you had an EV to drive around central London, where your V12 Aston Martin wouldn't be allowed because it made too much noise.
Was it pure electric? I know that they made.
Yeah, it was electric.
Okay, because I know they had like little concept electric IQs, but I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God. I was talking to my wife about it. She goes, that reminds me of like back in the day when like Kia first came out, and if you bought like a Kia minivan, they'd give you like a Kia sedan on the side.
Yes.
And
they did that. Ford did that too. If you bought a Blackwood, you could get like a Mercury Cougar or something, but not a good Cougar, the front wheel drive Cougar.
Yeah. So the point is,
none of that was electric.
But tchotchkes matter, and tchotchkes that were based on where the brand came from and how it gives you a sense of connection to it matters. So maybe BYD just needs to start selling little battery cells and be like, look, we're awesome.
Back to Ford. So the Chinese company that's actually supplying these EV batteries to Ford is BYD. BYD is relatively famous in the US for being backed by Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett's obviously, I don't know. Is he a controversial figure? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so.
People pretty much like Warren Buffett.
Yeah, I think. Well, honestly, for someone that's been doing what he's been doing for ages, is he's made his billions the boring way. He actually understood it, like, and invested the right way, based on research.
Yeah, he like did math. Warren Buffett was a similar guy. He's like so smart and so decent, and like every time you talk to him, he like pays attention to you like a human being, and just made a ton of money. Good for him.
He's, again, finger on the pulse. I mean, Buffett's been involved with BYD for years. And I think the fact that, again, with someone like him, it really did help bolster their progress. And you've got someone who's got the right bank account behind it, connected to the people that are the smart people, the engineers that are developing out the product that need the support. I think it's a combination of why they've gotten to where they're at. And now with this first major OEM supply deal, it just speaks to the long game. And to that end, I'm curious to see how many more OEMs jump on board with BYD because of this move. So,
is it wrong to say that BYD is itself an OEM, or are they more of a cottage thing?
Well, they do offer vehicles in Asia, so yes, in that sense. So, but I guess for legacy brands,
brands, I think is the way to say that, because like. And I got to Google how many cars they've sold.
BYD they move a boatload of electric cars.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they probably have sold almost as many BYDs in China as Volvo sells here, which again, I know I'm making every conversation about Volvo, but like, how about more than Mini? They've sold more cars than Mini has, and we consider Mini even
a
car maker.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they're a brand.
They're a brand. Yeah. So I think BYD as a brand seems like a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting for Ford to keep moving forward with the EV thing, even as like gas prices have been going down.
Well, again, they're all facing that same conversation as we all are right now of what's happening at the pump. Are people
Yeah.
going to maintain seeing the value of a cheaper fuel if gasoline still, becomes cheaper down the road? I think that there's still a bunch of benefit that comes with using electricity for fuel. Again, my favorite thing is if you got a house, a garage, or a driveway, you control your fuel destiny. You can fill up every day on your own terms. And to me, that's awesome because then you can even make your own fuel if you decide to use something like solar. And I look at those different for those who can afford it. It's so simple to just go, yeah, why not? And
Hasn't the conversation around EVs and around electrification to some extent always centered on insulating yourself from the cost of fuel? So
it
now
always
that
has.
that's gone, what's the new argument?
Well, again, it's not gone, but I think part of it then turns into you can basically control your own destiny. It's like, okay, but then it has to be convenience. So
Yes.
that's where people, again, a lack of understanding of how to use the new fuel type and how it impacts your daily life is still a big hurdle for people. And so, I mean, again, and the environmental angle is always going to be something that's on people's minds too. And especially, both current and post-COVID, you're going to have a lot of people that are remembering what it looked like to not have a bunch of vehicles on the road that were spewing out emissions. That does matter to a niche amount of people, but in the grand scheme, people all got to see that in first person. And I think that's something that will stick with people for a while. So, but do people have short memories? Are they going to just say, I just want to have my cheap fuel, I don't give a damn?
I think people, I mean, especially if you look at like India or China, I think people are going to remember seeing Mount Everest for the
Those,
first time, looking out the window, seeing, this giant mountain that has been there their whole lives and they've never seen it.
yep.
I think that's going to be big. So this is kind of your space, right? Like, I mean, we don't get into like who you work for, who I work for in our real lives, right? We kind of keep it more or less here, but this is your space. This is your area of expertise. So Ford isn't worried about low gas prices, leading to people going away from EVs. How are they, from a dealer level, from a sales level, from a company level, how are they going to educate the consumer and say, look, electrification is the way to go, almost regardless of the fuel?
Right.
And you can say you master your own destiny. You and I understand that because we're EV enthusiasts. Our listeners are probably EV enthusiasts. I don't think we have a lot of crossover from like diesel boys, right? So like you are the guy. So like, what's your 2-minute pitch meeting? You're in a party. Some guy goes, I don't know about electric cars. And then how do you pitch to him and say like, listen, man, this is why you need an EV? Matt, 2-minute pitch, go.
I would say the first thing that comes to my mind and what we tell everybody that we talk to from, for the work I do on a daily basis is there's just 4 things to think about when it comes to using electricity as fuel. It's more powerful. It's cheaper. It's everywhere. It's cleaner. It is still cheaper. The how much cheaper is the conversation right now about, is it really the big benefit we've always been talking about? But at the end of the day, if you're driving a car that runs on electricity, it is more powerful. You are going to have more torque. It is everywhere. Everywhere you can basically go that has a gas station, there's electricity hiding there too. But it's the fact that people can't visualize it. That's the tough part. And to me, that's where it gets lost. And the cleaner element, again, that's the environmental element. But I always think it's important to not use language that paints yourself into an immediate corner that sounds niche. I think it's okay to say it's cleaner, because that really is, it speaks to what it is. But if you get into the environmental angle too quickly, I think it'll get lost on some people. And the people that are into diesel, into combustion, they'll just say no. But for Ford's perspective and the fact that they're not seeing this as an issue, or maybe they do, but they're not admitting it, they did a study last fall where 42% of people they surveyed, when they asked them, how do you fill up an electric car? 42% of people said with gasoline. So Ford knows there's a massive educational barrier there. And so at the end of the day, who's going to be talking about that? It is going to be the dealerships. We have to get these people ready and set to talk about using electricity as fuel without scaring people off by using engineering terms that make no sense, because the competitive product is regular. So how do you simplify it down? What plugs to use? What's your power level? And so in our world, for what I do every day with, what I do for work is colors. That's an easy way to explain what your plug difference is, and numbers, higher number, faster charge, keep it simple. If you can break it down like that, you have captured what they need to know to be dangerous in using the car and trust using it and visualizing the new fuel.
So what do you do when they fill the frunk with gasoline?
At that point, you just Well, you probably walk them slowly away because they're probably dangerous and they don't even know it.
Well, that's where the self-driving cars come in, right?
Yeah, of course. Of
Yeah.
course. All right, well, that wraps it up for the third episode of the Electrify Expo podcast. You can join Joe and I next week as we talk about more things electrified and e-mobility. And also be sure to follow us on all social media for Electrify Expo at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.